A dramatic press conference in Riyadh this afternoon. The Saudi army lays out the debris of both drones and cruise missiles that they say were recovered from the two oil facilities hit in the kingdom 4 days ago. The top line, according to the Saudis, Iran and the Iranian Republican Guard were responsible.
If the Iranian regime and the IRGC, they are trying to hide any evidence from the component and with the technology, they are mistaken.
The demonstration put meat on the bones of what the Saudis have been saying over the last few days. In short, that contrary to what the Iran-backed Houthis have said, the attack was not launched from Yemen. The Saudis' evidence shows that the missiles came from the north, and their range meant a launch site in Yemen would have been too far away.
The cruise missile is not coming from Yemen. The Houthi militia and the proxy in Yemen, they are just following the order of the IRGC. Those kind of attack is coming from the north with the capability that most likely from the north it can be launched from somewhere. And right now we are working to know exactly the launch point.
The presentation explained that 18 drones attacked the Abqaiq facility and that 4 cruise missiles hit the Kuras site. A further 3 missiles fell short. In other words, it could have been even worse. So, what will the Saudis actually do next? The key message throughout today's press conference was that this was an assault on the global energy infrastructure. So by implication, any retaliation would have to be international in nature.
It was an affront to international law, and those responsible should be held accountable for their actions.
Which brings us to the Americans. The US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, arrived in Saudi Arabia within the last couple of hours. During the flight, Pompeo spoke to reporters. He called the strike on the Saudi oil facilities, quote, an Iranian attack that constituted, quote, an act of war. So far, President Trump's language has been more guarded. But earlier today, he announced new sanctions on Iran off the back of the attacks. In the last hour, he was asked about the possibility of retaliation.
It's very easy to attack, but if you ask Lindsay, ask him how did going into the Middle East, how did that work out? And how did going into Iraq work out? So we have a disagreement on that, and there's plenty of time to do some dastardly things. It's very easy to start, and we'll see what happens.
The question the world is asking this evening, are the new sanctions the end of the international backlash against Iran, or just the beginning?
Well, joining me now is Lina Khatib, head of the Middle East and North Africa program at the Foreign Affairs Policy Institute, Chatham House. Thanks for coming on the program, Lina. I mean, despite the brazenness of this attack, the language used by almost everyone today was actually quite cautious. Does that make me think, or you think rather, that they don't really want military retaliation, they don't want war?
Well, right now, war is not in anybody's interest, especially the United States, as President Trump faces another election in November. The last thing he will want is to launch a new conflict in the Middle East just, before he's about to hopefully be re-elected, if you ask him. Mm-hmm.
Is that because of petrol prices going up or the involvement of American soldiers on the ground?
Well, he just said it in the clip, didn't he? He referenced Iraq. He does not want to be seen as reckless in the 2 months before the election. So I think the big question is what will happen after the American election takes place.
OK, so why do you think the Iranians, if it was indeed them, and they seem to think it was, went this far? Because so far they've been using proxies to do their work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. But they are also, just like the US is exercising a maximum pressure campaign on Iran, the Iranians are exercising a maximum pressure campaign against their opponents as well. They've been engaged in a number of attacks. We've seen what happened in the Strait of Hormuz, for example. There were missiles launched by Iranian proxies in the past, and they've just now increased the dose. And it's likely that they're going to continue doing this for the time being.
Does that mean then that you think that military retaliation from the Saudis is now inevitable?
Actually, it's not, because the Saudis have their hands tied in Yemen. So if you think about it, the United States has an election looming, which means it's not going to launch an attack on Iran. Saudi Arabia is already struggling in Yemen, so it's not going to launch another front to the north towards Iran. And that gives Iran...
What about Iran itself? Are they looking for a war? No.
Well, they're not, but they are seeing a very good opportunity for them to exert this maximum pressure, at least, as I said, until the American election happens. So we're likely to see more of this kind of thing till November.
And if they push the Saudis further and further, could it backfire?
Well, it all depends on what happens with the new American administration, because the Saudis will never launch any war against Iran on their own. They will only do it if the US is on board.
So what you're saying, to sum it all up, the rhetorical question at the beginning of the programme is, are we facing an all-out war between Iran and Saudi Arabia? Your conclusion, based on the evidence so far, despite this attack, is no.
At least not yet.
Not yet. Lina Khatib, thank you very much indeed.